What's going on, everybody? All right, I am home from the National. I'm exhausted. I'm actually recording this on Sunday afternoon. Last night, I went to bed at 9 p.m. and I woke up at 8 and I was out. I slept for 11 straight hours. Now, later in the week, I'm going to do a video, sort of a recap, what my takeaways were. When you are at the center, like literally the epicenter of the card hobby, you notice things and you have things that you see and you go, oh, wow, that's not what I expected, or that is what I expected, or I was thinking this would happen and something else happened. And so I definitely am going to do a recap video. I'm kind of collecting my thoughts a little bit. I'm also going to share, there was a lot of generosity, to say the least, at the National. And I'm going to share a few gifts that I received and some things that were really, really generous that I really am thankful for. And I will be doing that again later in the week. That'll be Friday, probably Friday, maybe Saturday. I will do my regular Q&A on Wednesday. And yeah, I'm, again, lots of takeaways, lots of thoughts. I'll show my cards again. Very excited to do all of that. But today is a review of your responses from last week. And there's a reason I asked it. See, remember, last week's question was, has the recent news, now it feels like it was a month ago, but it was about a week and a half ago that, maybe 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, I think it was a week and a half ago, that it was announced that Peter Steinberg was officially no longer an employee at SGC. And that's a big deal because Peter is sort of the guy who took SGC and really started to put pressure on PSA. And when Collectors, the parent company, acquired SGC, what the initial response was is that nothing's going to change. There'll be two separate entities working under the same umbrella. It will be business as usual. Peter will continue to be working there for the foreseeable future. All of those are the things that we were told. And since then, a lot has transpired. And in my opinion, the most important thing that has transpired is Peter leaving. Now, a lot of people say, I'm tired of talking about grading. I'll continue to say this. If you're tired of talking about grading, that's fine. But grading affects the hobby at this point. Grading affects your collection and its value. Does grading affect the cards themselves? No, it doesn't affect the cards themselves. It's just where they're encapsulated, where they're entombed. And some people say, well, that's all that matters. Well, that's fine. I don't disagree. But when you're spending lots of money, I mean, I went to the National with $6,000 in my pocket. And then I blew my budget by another $1,000. And my budget is not that big. And I'm going to talk about that in the reflection video too. The budget and how much I put away to the cards. I have some thoughts on that. But the thing is when you're spending that kind of money on cards, a lot of us don't want our cards to go down in value. Most of us don't want our cards to go down in value. And if there's a potential that a change of leadership at one of the grading companies that graded cards, that have entombed cards in our collection, is going to go through some issues, it affects not just your current collection, but potentially the future value of future cards you might add. It doesn't change the cards themselves, but for most of us, just like a couple of weeks ago, I said, does value matter? And most people said, yeah, it matters some. How could it not? When we're spending this kind of money, how could it not? Well, because value matters, which I think we kind of established, we kind of all agree that 99% of us value at least matters some. And if value at least matters some and changes the grading company who graded cards in our collection or that we might buy in the future, if there is issues with that grading company or one of the grading companies, it could affect the values. There was a really good question or statement / question that was used in the responses this week. And I want to just start there. So I'm not going to get into the bulk of the answers yet, but there was a great comment. I want to share it, then I want to kind of respond to it, and then I want to move forward through the rest of your responses. There were some fantastic responses this week. Check this one out first. Would make no sense for SGC slabs to lose value if they go out of business. The card is what it is. That doesn't change. If you have a card, let's say a 9 in an SGC, why on earth would you sell it to someone offering you a lowball number when you could just crack it out and resubmit it to another grading company? All right, couple things. There are a couple of things I feel the need to say here to follow up what I just said before, and kind of in response to that, before we can kind of get into this, because I think that it sort of sets the foundation for the whole discussion. The first thing I want to say is, okay, SGC goes under, you could just crack it and send it to another grading company. Well, there's a little bit of a problem with that. The problem is, if you crack it and send it to another grading company, it doesn't mean it's going to get the same grade. So if I'm going to buy a card for 9 prices, and then I crack it and I submit it and it gets a 7 with one of the other grading companies, then buying that card at 9 prices wasn't a good move, because now everyone who's going to buy it in the future is going to want it for 7 prices because it's now in a 7 holder. And so because of that, we can't just assume it's going to get the same grade. And one of the things about that is the consistencies of the grading companies. The head of PSA, apparently, PSA and SGC now, the head of all grading at Collectors himself even said they're not consistent.
Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to get the same grade, because it's a grader's opinion and there's ranges and standards. So it could grade something differently. Just because it got a PSA 8 the first time doesn't mean it's always going to get a PSA 8. It could get a 9, it could get a 7, it could get a 7.5.
You're probably saying to yourself, I feel like I've heard that quote before. I feel like I've seen that clip before. It was here. I'm going to continue. I will continue to remind everybody of that clip. I will continue to share that clip. And the reason I will continue to share that clip is because we have to remember, as he just said, there are standards, there are ranges, and ultimately it comes down to the grader's opinion. So the head of grading says that the grade is an opinion and it could change. So even if it was in a PSA holder and you cracked it and you resubmitted, it could get a different grade. We know that. That happens all the time. He's admitting it there. So we can't just say, oh, well, if SGC goes under and nobody likes SGC anymore, I'll just crack it and resubmit it. Doesn't mean it'll get the same grade. Now, here's the other thing. By the way, I saw Ryan Hose there. He looked like a really nice guy. I didn't walk up and talk to him. I don't think he doesn't watch my channel. Let's face it, he's got better ways to use his time. But if he had ever seen a clip, I just have a feeling that maybe he's not a big fan, because I am a person who tries to hold the grading companies accountable. It's one of the only times I'm negative, let's face it. One of the only times I get negative is at the grading companies. And I know I'll get comments down below in this video. Oh, Greg, here we go, grading again, SGC again. Keep scrolling. It matters to almost all of us. If it doesn't matter to you, there are a lot of channels on TV that I don't watch, and I don't watch every episode of every show that's ever been created for a reason. So, but here's my thought. Here's the other thing, and this matters. Ash called me. Ash called me like a day or two before the National. And we were talking, and that's when I said, hey, will you send over the pictures of your inventory for the preview, which I posted last Wednesday, and I showed his inventory that he was bringing to the National. I got that because he called me, and we were talking, and I said, what do you think? And I don't want to misquote him, but I said, what do you think? And he said, I don't really know why it would really matter. Like, SGC's still around, PSA's still around. Even if SGC wasn't around, it doesn't mean the card's any different. And I said, Ash, here's the problem. I said, I've got an 18 and a 19-year-old daughter. And when they turned 16, we provided them with cars. My oldest daughter, Molly, she's got a Honda CRV. And my younger daughter, Lucy, she's got a Volkswagen Passat. If I had come home and said, hey, I got you a car, and it was a Saturn, they would have said, Saturn? What's a Saturn? Now, most people our age, midlifers, we know what Saturn is. They were around for a few years as an American company. It was by the sticker price. They didn't negotiate price. They were a decent car company. And Ash goes, we had Saturns. We loved those cars. We had several Saturns, yeah. And I said, if you turn to your son, who's a younger guy, and we said, hey, we're going to go buy you a used Saturn, what do you think he'd think? And he's like, really good point. He would say, Saturn? Never heard of them. They make cars? Never seen their commercials. None of my friends drive a Saturn. So what happens is these companies, when they go away, those of us that have been around for a while, we still remember them. But those of us that are coming up and coming of age, we go, who? Petty was talking about, at one of the dinners at the National, Petty was talking about a Trans Am, and he's like, yeah, young people don't even know about Trans Ams. I mean, if I said to my students, hey guys, who in here drives a Trans Am? Who in here knows what a Trans Am is? But if I went to, a group of baby boomers, and I said, what's a Trans Am? They'd all know. So what happens is as time goes by and the eras move on, the upcoming era goes, SGC who? I don't think that grades would just fall off a cliff if SGC's label went away. I don't think that would happen. But over time, the people coming in after SGC is gone, if it's gone, of course it's not gone yet. Am I fear-mongering? I'm not trying to fear-monger. What I'm trying to do is plan ahead. And so I'm asking everybody. That's why I'm asking, because I don't know. What does everybody think will happen? How will you change? Will you change if SGC goes under, and why or why not? That's the point. This is an information gathering session. What do other collectors like us think? Let's finally, I've been going for 10 minutes already. Let's hear what you guys had to say. Several people said, no, I stand by SGC. This first one says, my answer for this week's question is I'm holding on to all my SGC slabs, and next year at Strongsville, I plan on making a big SGC submission. If SGC does close their doors, maybe their values go down, but I see that as an opportunity for better deals. Who knows? The values could go up for people that are fans of the SGC slabs like me. If you can't get them anymore, why shouldn't their values go up? My buddy Dan of Dan's Vintage Baseball PC says, as to next week's question, as the great philosopher Joe Perot recently said, we still have the cards inside the slabs, so what ultimately are we worried about? I'm sending a huge order into SGC when I return from the National. I'm staying until the final helicopter leaves from the roof of the U.S. Embassy in Saigon, so to speak. This next one says, I am not changing the way I buy cards. When or if the high-anxiety collectors quit buying and start selling cards in SGC slabs, I will definitely be buying their discounted slabs to get the cards. My buddy Joe over at Redneck Collector said, I'm still grading with SGC. I just got an order back and did a video on it talking about how I still trust them. Their grading still seems to be consistent, so why give up on them? I think most of the doubt and fear-mongering comes from a general disdain of Collector's Universe and some belief that Pete Steinberg was irreplaceable. I can't imagine a scenario in which SGC slabs take a substantial hit in value. Who's to say any slab is going to maintain its place in the market? People worry too much. The most polarizing issue, whenever I talk about it, the most polarizing issue is grading companies. And the reason that we're all so polarized by it is because some of us are all in on PSA, and some of us are all in on SGC, and some of us are mixed. But if some of our collection and some of the value of our collection, and again, we've kind of established that value matters. If you look in the mirror and you go, value doesn't matter at all, I could care less. Thanks for hanging in for the first few minutes of the episode. Go ahead and catch us on Wednesday for Q&A. See you then. But for the rest of us that do care about value, for the rest of us, it does at least matter some. We do have to think about this, and it's polarizing because if some of your collection is in an SGC holder, you have the potential of being affected. So what we have to really do is we have to take a long, deep look in the mirror. We have to really look in the mirror, and we have to say, what do we want to happen? I feel like a lot of us do this. A lot of us say what we want to happen instead of what our brain thinks will actually happen. A lot of the people out there who I'm friends with, they're like, I just don't see SGC going anywhere. It doesn't make any sense. Almost all of them have a majority of their collection in SGC. And most of the people who say, no doubt about it, SGC is gone. PSA has gobbled them up. It's over. This is why everybody should be getting rid of their SGC stuff. Almost all of them are PSA people. People are A, believing what they want to believe, and B, protecting their turf. They're protecting their collection by trying to convince each other that there's not really a problem. And there might be a problem. There might be a problem, guys. The SGC booth wasn't busy. The PSA booth was slammed. Now, I've mentioned this to many people, and many people say, well, it's all about on-site submissions. PSA was slammed because people were doing on-site submissions. SGC wasn't slammed because they could just mail their stuff in. The problem with that is I went to both booths last year. Last year, I went to the booth for PSA. I went to the booth for SGC. And last year, both were busy. Both had lines. Both you had to wait. The only waiting going on at the SGC booth were SGC employees waiting for something to do. I'm going to be really interested. I'm going to be watching closely at a couple of numbers at the end of two big numbers that I think are going to tell a big story. Maybe even three. Not in July, because Peter just resigned. Let's look at August. Let's look at September. What are the number of submissions at SGC in August, year over year and month over month? And what are the submissions at CGC? And what are the numbers at PSA? If SGC's numbers are down in August and September, the 2 full months after Peter resigns, we will know that there is a major problem. And don't get me wrong, I'm hoping there's not. If you watched my videos, the video that posted on Saturday afternoon, I made a submission to SGC. I submitted 12 cards. I'm not hoping that SGC numbers go down. I'm hoping they go up. I'm hoping they are forced. I am hoping that SGC is forced to stay open. The way that you can help keep SGC's doors open is by submitting to SGC. If everybody goes, I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to wait and see because I don't know, so I'm not going to send anything to SGC. The ivory towers, the guys with the corner offices at PSA headquarters are going to go, the demand's not there anymore for SGC. I don't know why. But there's no demand. So let's keep moving some of those employees over from SGC over to PSA. Isn't that what you do? When some people are boycotting a group that you believe in and want to remain healthy, don't you go give them your business? Isn't that what we do? If we want to save SGC, submit to SGC. It's one of the reasons I decided to do my submission at the National. It's like, here's some business, guys. Come on. If the numbers plummet in August and September, it's going to get bad quick. I have a big crossover. I've been planning sort of to cross over. And I'm probably maybe an idiot. And some of you are saying that's an understatement. I've been planning on taking a bunch of PSA holder cards and switching them to SGC. And I'm going to do it in the next few weeks. And the reason I'm going to do it is I want to give SGC money. And some of you are saying, but they're a collector brand. We can't give them money. I want them around. Let's not give PSA a reason not to. But also the CGC numbers. What happens at CGC over the next couple of months? If SGC's numbers plummet and CGC's numbers don't surge, we're in deep trouble, guys. Because that means people aren't submitting to SGC, so where are they submitting instead? If you're leaving SGC, which, okay, are you going to CGC? Or are you just, all right, I guess I'll go to PSA. This is going to be really interesting the next couple of months. All right. Some people said, that's all, folks. And it is time to go over to PSA. I'm now a PSA person, I guess. Or I'm not going to submit to SGC So I guess I'm going to submit to PSA. Let's look at a couple of those comments, and then I'll share some thoughts on that.
Some said, I think PSA is where I'll go. This first one says, fun video. Interesting seeing all the oddball cards. For next week's question, SGC slabs will certainly lose value over time if the brand fades away. The hobby forgets. I used to be all PSA. Then, over the last 5 years, I became more slabnostic and added many SGC cards to my collection. With the recent news, I'm moving back to PSA and staying away from SGC. I'm not crossing anything yet, but I am thinking about it, and my submissions to SGC have stopped. Greg, I'm thinking that SGC will probably go away eventually. However, the brand will still be respected as the company that gave PSA a real run for their money and card values, and that slab will still sell well. I'd probably change your next submission to PSA though. Just looking forward, and the future rests with the company whether we like it or not. PSA is like the NFL Shield.
All right. So some people are saying, yeah, if I'm going to be spending a lot of money on cards that are slabbed, and I think that SGC might go away, and I think that if SGC goes away, that some of the values could go away, then I got to go PSA. Now, a lot of you forget this because maybe you weren't watching the channel. But when I was first starting the channel, like right about when I started my channel, which was, man, it was almost 3 years ago, 34 months ago. In October that year, what year was that? 2022, I guess. In October of 2022, when I started the channel, I had just started being open to SGC slabs. Before that, I was only PSA. Only. And then I really took a step back and I looked and I was like, no, I'm going to go SGC now too. And now I'm both. And now I have submitted to both over the last couple of years. I've bought both the last couple of years. But when I went to the National, I was hoping to make a big purchase. And I made 2 big purchases. For me, I made 2 big purchases. I bought a card for $5,000 and I bought a card for $1,950. Those are 2 of the 5 most expensive cards in my collection. And it went through my head. The night of Wednesday, the day that it opened, the 30th, I guess it was, right? The night that it opened, I said, I was walking around with a bunch of buddies, hanging out with Mike Petty, hanging out with Tony. I could list them all. I was hanging out with a bunch of people, and a couple of people were saying, I'm going to kind of try to stay away from SGC slabs. If I have a choice, I'm going to lean toward the PSA slab if I'm buying an expensive card. And I got to be honest, it did go through my mind. When I would look at a card, I was like, this is a decent look, this is a nice looking card, but it is an SGC slab. Now, I would have bought it if it was the right card. I would have bought the card and not the holder. But the fact that both cards that I bought were in PSA holders, it gave me extra peace of mind about the purchase. It made me say, okay, at least I'm not going to have to deal with that if that happens. So I'm still willing to buy SGC and PSA slabs. Again, I just made an SGC submission, guys, but I think that it went through my mind. And if it's going through my mind, and I'll be honest, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but there were other people that I was texting with and talking to that said the same thing. I feel at peace and at ease with the fact that I bought 2 cards. I purchased 2 things, and that's all I bought the whole trip. And both of them were in PSA holders. I think they actually look better in SGC holders, except for the Cobb, because the red and the color match with the red and the flip, I actually think looks pretty good. But I think my Cy Young would look better in an SGC holder, but I'm at a little bit of more peace with the fact that it's a PSA holder. I don't know. I don't think I'm alone. Again, it's not what I want, it's what I think.
This next one says, I'm going elsewhere. This first one says, I am holding my SGC slab cards and buying if priced right without a problem. I will not be sending any more cards to be graded by SGC, and for sure will not be sending any to PSA again, as I hate monopoly. Truthfully, I probably own only a few cards I would like graded, though I have many raw cards. If I grade, I may go back to Beckett or try CGC. I do have some of my autographed cards I would like authenticated and will use either Beckett or CGC rather than PSA. It gets very tiring spending more money and time having cards reslabbed and will enjoy the cards in my collection. I am not selling at the moment, and I do not think in the long run it will make a difference when I do sell. This one says, holding. The highest sold priced cards ever to sell have been in SGC slabs. SGC is a reputable company. This has not changed. If I was going to consider a crossover, I would only move to CGC. As you know, PSA would likely drop all the grades by 1 or 2 points, maybe 3.5. Did you see Teapot's video? Also, I personally don't like PSA slabs. To be clear, I am currently only sending cards to CGC and Tag. In my opinion, they have the fairest grades and best visual display. Thanks for your videos. This comment says, knee-jerk reactions are not usually the best. In 5 years, another better TPG could easily replace PSA as the top dog. I will continue to collect cards in SGC slabs, provided that card is the best example for the money. I will never give a single penny to PSA, as I don't support incompetent, corrupt entities with no customer service. I think CGC will be making serious inroads in the coming months, and still haven't found a single SGC supporter who plans to shift their allegiance to PSA.
So several people in their comments maybe said, I'm sticking with SGC, but for now, I'm not going to send anything to SGC. I might send a PSA, or maybe people said, I'm not sending to SGC anymore, I'm not sending to PSA. I'm either leaving it raw or I'm going to CGC. Regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, if there are people who are going to slow or stop or pause to SGC, or instead of going to SGC, going to somewhere else, that's not good for the health of SGC. The swirling questions. Greg, you're part of the problem. You're the one raising doubt right now. I'm not trying to raise doubt. Again, I am not sitting in a consulting room with SGC or PSA or CGC. Quite frankly, I wish I was. But I'm not. What I am doing is I am sharing what's going on in my head, asking what's going on in your head, so that I can continue to move forward in a manner that I think is smart. It's about the cards. I'll be honest with you. I hate the fact that we have to talk about grading. I hate it. But that's where we are. That's where we are. I hate the fact that when I own a car, I have to think about replacing the tires. I hate the fact that on my house, I have to make sure that I blow the leaves and sticks off of the roof so that I don't get storm and rain cause leaks in my house. I hate those things, but it is what it is. It is our reality. It should be about the cards. It's mostly about the cards. But we have to continue to think about what the best move is moving forward. Now, I'm talking mostly about vintage here. I think if I was a modern collector, then I would feel even more concerned about SGC. Because a lot of modern, that's a whole different video. If you're going to go with CGC, if you're going to stay with SGC, in my opinion, we're going to start seeing that shift in the monthly gem rate numbers. And the monthly gem rate numbers are going to tell us a lot about what's actually happening. Again, this is not a video about what Greg wants. This is not a video about what all of us want in the hobby. This is a video about what do we think will happen and how should we plan accordingly. When I'm driving home at night, I don't want to be looking ahead to see if there's a deer on the side of the road that might jump out. But I have to look for the deer. I have to look ahead on the side of the road and say, is there something over there? Because if there's something over there, it could jump out. And if it jumps out, I need to be able to hit my brakes. I need to be able to slow down. I need to be able to turn. I don't drive aggressively. I drive defensively. And by driving defensively, I can look ahead and hopefully prevent a problem for myself. That's all I'm doing here is I'm going, okay, based on all the information that I have, what do I think is going to happen? And based on what I think is going to happen, how do I want to adjust what I'm going to do accordingly? Why do news stations have a weatherman? Because you know if a storm is coming. Well, why would we care that a storm is coming? If a storm is coming, we got to get on the roof. We got to clean out those gutters, guys, even though we don't want to. I don't want to be thinking about this stuff, but it's smart. And if we don't, our roof could cave in. Now, literally, we're talking about that the sky is falling. I don't think the sky is falling. I think, my final thoughts, and then we'll talk about the question for next week. I think cards and SGC holders will always have value. Of course they will. They're not going to go to zero. But if a certain number of collectors aren't interested in purchasing cards and SGC holders because the brand doesn't exist, if the brand doesn't exist, then what that means is we want to be prepared for that. Because as we know, if the demand for something drops, the price of something drops. And if the demand for SGC cards and the gap in the prices increases, We would want to know that if we have SGC cards in our collection. I'm not predicting what will happen. I'm asking all of you. And then based on what we think, we might want to plan accordingly. If I think that I see a deer on the side of the road up ahead, I slow down a little bit. I take my foot off the accelerator and I put it over the brake in case I have to stop. That's not panicking. That's preparing. And I just want to be prepared for what's ahead. My question for all of you for this coming week is this. A lot of us went to the National. A lot of us watched content about the National. Whether you were attending the National or watching content from it, what is your biggest takeaway? What is your biggest takeaway? 2 years ago, I didn't go to the National and I watched tons of videos. And you know what the common theme was? You know what the common takeaway was? The thing that I saw over and over and over was people talking about autographed vintage cards. And since that happened 2 years ago, the prices on those have exploded. If we pay attention to what's happening, we could potentially prepare for what to do next. So, what were your takeaways? What did you see? What did you notice? Whether in person or through videos, what was the theme? What was the one thing that you took away from the events of the 2025 National in Chicago? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I look forward to sharing them next week. Wednesday's Q&A later in the week. My final thoughts and my final recap on the National. Thanks for watching.